Hello, friends. Today, we invite you to embark on a deep and revealing journey about a topic that not only touches the heart, but also resonates in the souls of millions of people around the world. The countries where the Bible is prohibited. The Bible, one of the most read and respected texts in human history, symbolizes not only faith, but also hope, freedom, and the right to seek a greater meaning in life. However, even in a world that claims to be progressive, there are nations where religious freedom, a fundamental human right, is not only ignored but actively suppressed. But before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so to receive notifications for more amazing videos. In many of these places, the practice of the Christian faith is seen as a threat to the prevailing regime or a challenge to established social norms. In contexts of political and religious oppression, individuals who simply wish to gather in prayer or read the scriptures face severe persecution, ranging from arbitrary imprisonment to physical violence. This dramatic scenario forces us to reflect on the cost of freedom and the importance of tolerance in a diverse society. Get ready for an impactful account, as throughout this video, you will discover not only the names of these countries, but also the stories of courage and resistance from people who, even in the face of great adversity, keep the flame of faith alive. And to intensify this emotional journey, stay tuned, as the last country on this list will surprise you in a way you never expected. It serves as a powerful reminder that in many places the struggle for religious freedom continues, and global solidarity and support are more necessary than ever. Let's explore this topic together, connecting us to a reality often forgotten but vital for understanding freedom and human rights. First, we find North Korea, one of the most repressive regimes in the world, where the Bible is considered not just a religious text, but a subversive item that challenges the state ideology. In this country, the cult of personality surrounding its leaders, especially Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un, occupies the center of public and private life, making any belief that does not align with state doctrine a potential threat. In this context, practicing Christianity is viewed as an act of rebellion, a direct affront to the system that governs the nation with an iron fist. The North Korean government not only prohibits the possession of the Bible, but also conducts intense surveillance over the population. Reports from defectors and human rights activists reveal that those found with a Bible or engaging in religious activities are often captured, interrogated, and, in many cases, sent to political prisoner camps. Conditions in these camps are inhumane. Prisoners face grueling forced labor, physical and psychological torture, and in many cases, death from causes ranging from starvation to extreme violence. The regime's brutality also extends to the families of prisoners. The concept of guilt by association is widely applied, meaning that not only does the individual who possesses the Bible face punishment, but also their family members may be penalized, sent to re-education camps, or face discrimination and ostracism in society. This strategy is effective in creating a climate of fear, where most people self-censor and avoid any form of religious practice, even in secret. Afghanistan ranks second on our list, and its current situation is alarming for Christians and other minority religious groups. Following the Taliban's rise in August 2021, the country plunged into a regime that imposes a strict interpretation of Islamic law, making the practice of Christianity not just undesirable, but extremely risky. In this context, the Bible is perceived as a direct threat to Islamic culture and identity, triggering a climate of fear and oppression for those wishing to profess their faith in Christ. The Taliban's ideology is deeply rooted in a radical view of Islam, which does not tolerate any form of religious practice that is not their strict interpretation of Sunni Islam. Christians, who were already facing discrimination before the Taliban seized power, now find themselves in a desperate situation, where mere possession of a Bible or participation in religious gatherings can result in severe persecution. Reports from witnesses and human rights organizations indicate that those identified as Christians are often targeted for surveillance and denunciations by the local community, which is encouraged to report any activity deemed subversive. Punishments for Christians who are discovered can vary from imprisonment and torture to execution. The Taliban justifies these actions based on their interpretation of Sharia, which considers apostasy, the abandonment of the Islamic faith as a capital crime. This creates an environment where many Christians are forced to live in hiding, often concealing their faith even from friends and family to avoid reprisals that could have fatal consequences. In third place, we find Somalia, a country where religious extremism has deep and complex roots, resulting in an alarming situation for Christians. Since the collapse of the central government in the 1990s and the subsequent rise of Islamic militant groups like Al-Shabaab, religious persecution has intensified dramatically. In this environment, the practice of Christianity is not only discouraged, but considered an act of betrayal that can lead to severe consequences, including public executions. Somalia is predominantly Muslim, and the strict interpretation of Islamic law that prevails among extremist groups does not tolerate any deviation from Islamic orthodoxy. Christians, who represent a very small minority in the population, live under constant surveillance and risk. Possessing a Bible is seen as a direct affront to the dominant culture and religion, and those found with this sacred text face not only the possibility of imprisonment, but, in more extreme cases, summary execution. Reports of persecution are devastating. Human rights organizations have documented cases where Christians have been kidnapped and executed in public squares, aiming to intimidate the population and discourage conversion to Christianity. These brutal acts serve as a warning to those who might consider the Christian faith, establishing a climate of fear and silencing that permeates the everyday lives of the few believers in the country. In addition to executions, Christians in Somalia face a range of other forms of oppression and discrimination. The Christian community often lives in isolation, fearing not only violence from extremists but also hostility from their own communities. Many Christians are forced to publicly renounce their faith or hide, abandoning any religious practice out of fear of reprisals. Underground churches are rare, and spiritual support among Christians is almost non-existent, making it difficult to build a faith community that could offer encouragement and protection. In Malaysia, the situation surrounding the Bible and the practice of Christianity is complex and multifaceted, marked by stringent restrictions that reflect the tension between religious freedom and religion-based legislation. Although often described as a moderate Muslim country, Malaysia adopts a strict interpretation of Islamic law, particularly in states where Sharia is applied. This approach creates an environment in which the Bible is viewed with suspicion, and evangelization is treated as a violation of established social and religious norms. The Malaysian constitution guarantees freedom of religion, but this freedom is limited regarding activities involving the conversion of Muslims. The government, in partnership with religious authorities, closely monitors any attempts at proselytism, and anti-conversion laws are rigorously enforced. Thus, any effort to evangelize or share the Christian faith with Muslims can result in severe punishments, ranging from heavy fines to imprisonment. Reports of Christians who have been persecuted or detained for attempting to share their faith are common, revealing a system that not only criminalizes evangelization, but also fosters a climate of fear among believers. In addition to legal restrictions, Malaysian society is characterized by strong social pressure against conversion. The stigma associated with becoming a Christian is profound, and converts often face discrimination and ostracism from their communities, including the loss of family and social ties. This pressure is exacerbated by the perception that conversion is a betrayal of Malaysian cultural and religious identity, leading many Christians to hide or practice their faith in secret, away from the eyes of society. In Saudi Arabia, the practice of Christianity is not only discouraged but strictly prohibited by a regime that adopts a rigorous interpretation of Islamic law. The country, the birthplace of Islam and the guardian of its holiest sites, such as Mecca and Medina, has a deeply rooted religious identity that is reflected in its policies and laws. In this context, any public manifestation of Christian faith is considered a serious offense, and the mere possession of a Bible can result in confiscation, imprisonment, or even harsher punishments. Saudi legislation, grounded in Sharia, does not recognize Christianity as a legitimate religion within its borders. While the country's constitution mentions the protection of religion, in practice, only Islam is officially acknowledged. This exclusivity means that Christians are not allowed to worship openly, build churches, or organized religious gatherings. The prohibition of practicing Christianity is part of a broader effort to maintain the religious and cultural homogeneity of the nation, and authorities do not hesitate to use intimidation tactics to silence any form of religious dissent. Christians residing in Saudi Arabia, many of whom are expatriates or migrant workers, live under a constant state of surveillance and fear. The discrimination they face is multifaceted. It is not just a legal prohibition, but also social hostility that permeates everyday life. Christians may be targets of discrimination in the workplace, education, and even basic services like healthcare. This social marginalization makes it difficult to create support networks and community, forcing many to practice their faith in secret, away from the inquisitive eyes of society. Moreover, religious authorities frequently conduct operations to detect and suppress activities deemed subversive. Reports of Christians being arrested for being found with Bibles or for attempting to gather for prayers in private locations are common. During these episodes, confiscated Bibles are not only destroyed, but the individuals involved may face interrogations and, in more severe cases, corporal punishment or long prison sentences. This system of repression not only eliminates the practice of faith, but also serves as a strong disincentive for anyone considering converting to Christianity. Uzbekistan is one of the countries where religious freedom is severely restricted, especially concerning the practice of Christianity. The Bible, in particular, faces an environment of restriction and surveillance that makes the lives of Christians extremely challenging. Since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, Uzbekistan has struggled with issues of religious freedom, and the government employs a range of tactics to control religious practice. The possession of the Bible without official permission is illegal, and unregistered religious groups face constant persecution. Authorities often conduct raids on churches and private homes where Christians gather, arresting believers and confiscating religious materials. The legal framework in Uzbekistan heavily favors state control over religion, creating an environment in which Christians must navigate a complex landscape of restrictions and risks. Reports from human rights organizations indicate that many Christians have been subjected to arbitrary detention, fines, and even imprisonment simply for practicing their faith. In this context, many believers choose to hide their faith and worship in secret. Underground churches exist, but they operate in constant fear of discovery. The consequences of being found can be dire. Christians may face harassment from authorities, loss of employment, and social ostracism. This environment of fear and repression creates significant obstacles for Christians seeking to gather, worship, and build a community of faith. Finally, we arrive in China, a nation where the Bible is regulated through a complex system of state control over religion. Although the Chinese constitution guarantees freedom of religion, in practice, this freedom is limited by the government's desire to maintain control over all religious activities. The Communist Party views any form of organized religion, including Christianity, as a potential challenge to its authority, and as a result, religious groups are subjected to intense surveillance and regulation. The Bible is not outright banned in China, but its distribution and translation are heavily controlled. Only government-sanctioned churches are allowed to operate openly, and even within these contexts, there are strict limitations on sermons and materials that can be used. Many Christians resort to underground churches, where they can gather in secret, but these congregations are at constant risk of raids by authorities. Reports of church members being arrested, fined, or harassed are common, and believers often face significant challenges in accessing Bibles or other religious materials. The Chinese government employs a range of strategies to control religious practice, including surveillance technology and a network of informants. This environment creates a climate of fear, where Christians may be hesitant to share their faith even with trusted friends. The government also emphasizes the Sinicization of religion, promoting a version of Christianity that aligns with the party's ideology and goals. This ideological manipulation of faith serves as a tool to dilute genuine expressions of Christian belief and reinforces the regime's authority.